Nice. I don't, it seems like I do series sermons, and I don't really do series sermons. Um, but kind of a continuation from last week, but only because I heard from enough of you that it kind of resonated. That it was like, hey, you were talking to me. And I guess I was talking to you, but I didn't know I was talking to you. You understand how that works? Yeah, I mean, how many of y'all been in church long enough to understand that the preacher's not really talking to you when he's talking to you? Okay, good. So enough of you said, that's me. That's where I'm at. That's the place in my life that you described is it. So we're going to just go real deep. Okay, today it is deep, kinda. At least I think it's deep. You may be like way smarter than me, and you're going to walk out going, doing that for years. Just don't tell me. Let me think I enlightened you today, all right? That's helping one another, okay? Be hands and feet, would you? But, when you tell me, well, I feel like I'm in a meantime season of my life. And a meantime season is one of those where you don't know exactly what's next, or you look at your situation, and then you look 5 years or 2 years or even next year into the future, and you're like, nothing really going to change. And there's really nothing I can do about it. I don't know if I'm okay with it. I would really like something else to happen, but I don't see there's any way to do it. Sort of it is what it is, and that's all it's ever going to be type of situation. That's what we're talking about. That's what we talked about last week. And a lot of you said, I'm kind of there. I look around at my life, and you know what? It's not what I thought it would be. It's not exactly how I thought it was going to turn out. Or I look at other people, and they're kind of living my life. Or at least they're doing what I thought I would be doing, but I'm just not. And I don't see any way out of where I am. So I'm kind of just, meh. And I think the word we used last week was blah. It's just kind of blah. Now, today, as I explained, kind of not really the next step, but just a different perspective and a way for you to actually almost get out of it, to jump past that feeling of blah and move on. If you're a non-Christian in your room, you're going to say, that's just crazy. I knew you Christians were nuts, and you just proved it today. And if you're a Christian and you've never bumped up against this option or even had this thought, you're going to think it may be crazy. Or maybe you have heard it and you just hadn't kind of really related it to your life. Because I can see it in certain people's lives where it really is almost easier to understand. But in every area of our life where we feel we're in this bleh type scenario or can't move past type scenario, this can be applied. This can be used to move us forward and to actually grow us in our relationship with God. As a pastor, and I believe every pastor probably has this option or opportunity, you get to meet people who are in some type of adversity all the time. And the really special ones are those who look at their adversity and they actually look at their adversity as being sifted through the hand of God. The thing that's happening to them is a direct relation of God's hand on their life. And let me tell you, it is tough to hear it if your faith isn't as strong. Two people in our church have it, Laura and Dennis. They're the two that come to my mind. They're the two that I've dealt with the most that really come to this. Laura had cancer, and she came through it with that, this is God's plan. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Dennis has you just name the disease, and he's got it. He feels he's a God overachiever. He feels that God could really teach him a lesson through one, but he can really, really, really teach him a lesson through 6 or 7 diseases. And he has them. And he seriously looks at them as blessed. I'm blessed. God gave me this, not as punishment. See, this is where the attitude will switch for some of us. This is where it gets a little deeper. that God can provide an adversity to you, not to teach you anything, not for you to learn a lesson, but simply because He's God and He's going to do something through your adversity. You know, we read God works everything together for good, and it's kind of like some people say that and they think God takes all the bad stuff that's already happening to me and he funnels it into something He can use. Well, you know what? That's kind of cool, but not necessarily. Because to say that is kind of saying God is up there waiting for bad stuff to happen and then going, I can use that, no problem. No problem. Yeah, I didn't see that one coming, but I can kind of push that into my path for you. It'll work. It'll be all right. See, I would much rather live a life that God's in control of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'd much rather walk through life understanding that everything is sifted through God's hands. I'd much rather think that God's in control of my whole life than allowing Satan, because that's the only other option, to do things in my life and then God kind of massaging it so that it still works out for good. We only have one example of that happening, and that's Job. Okay? And we kind of read that as a special test. I mean, Job was unlike anybody else. And I believe if somebody else had come along that's like Job, we'd be told, well, this guy's kind of like Job. So if we don't have any other guys, I don't think we need to look at Job's life and then say, well, Satan is really testing me, just like he did Job. Well, to say that would mean that you think God believes you're super righteous and have no way of ever denying Him. And how many of you have failed in that scenario? Yeah, so you're not Job. And God's not treating you like Job. He's not looking at your life going, nah, have at him. He's a super Christian. Like he did Job. So if it's not that, God has to be the one. I just believe God has to be the one. So we're going to look at it, and we're going to see that it's actually built into the New Testament. It's actually built into the Bible, that's what happens. That God sifts our adversity through His own hands and sometimes actually hands it to us. He actually is the author of the adversity. Not the devil made me do it anymore. God did this. But then our attitude about that has to change and what we can do. Charles Stanley was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by his son Andy. And Andy said, tell us about the most adverse situation you've faced. What's the biggest adversity you've had? And Charles said, well, it was a time in my life when I hated my church. He started the church. I hated them. They were all just kind of like at each other, and they were at me, and they were constantly talking about me behind my back, and it was just crazy. And I was seriously in my life going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and should I leave the church that I founded? Should I do this? Should I do that? And he said, one day I was praying. I was just flat out going, God, I don't know. And he said, I really felt God say, until you stop looking at them and start looking at me and understand that it's me doing it to you and not them, will you ever move forward? Think about that for just a minute. Stop looking at each other as the enemy and look at God as doing something to or for you, and then you'll be able to move forward in your walk with God. That's tough. That's not an easy thing to do. It's kind of hard to look at your life when things, especially other people, are doing stuff to you, saying stuff about you, and be able to look at that and go, that is from God. Because it's not about them, it's about you. The only way it could be evil is if you were listening to evil. Nobody else can affect you. Only God can affect you. You understand? Stay with me. Let's see if we can get there together. Now, I don't mean to think I'm speaking as an authority on this subject. I'm not. Because I think, as you'll see at the end, it's something we all kind of get to on our own. I just want to show you the example that the Bible offers us to see if we can apply it to our life. So it's for all of us in here who didn't get the dream job or aren't doing our dream job. And it's for those of us in here who maybe you don't have the marriage that you thought you would, but neither one of you are willing to just walk away. You're just kind of accepting it as bad. Don't really know how to work on it. Maybe you don't have the career you wanted or you used to have. Maybe your kids have gone they were on a ledge and they went over the cliff. And your kids haven't done exactly what you thought they would do, and you're kind of disappointed in that. And you don't really know what you're going to do because of that. You don't really know how to teach them anything. Maybe it's your health. Maybe you've got something that's debilitating. It's not deadly. You're not going to die from it. They can't cure it. They can kind of fix it, and they can kind of keep you moving. This is for us. Because your temptation is to give up. Your temptation is maybe to run. Your temptation is maybe to look at your family and go, you know what? I'll go start another family. Maybe your temptation is to pick up a habit, to forget about the problem, therefore creating another problem. To run to something that can cause a bigger problem than they have. We looked at that last week. This is who we're talking to. And if you're not there, I told you this last week, if you're not there, if you're not in that kind of state, hold on, you'll end up there. We all end up, I believe, not authority, I believe we all end up in a season like that at some point in our life. And what's really cool is that there are people in the Bible who did exactly the same thing. Because when you and I end up like this, we start questioning God. We talked about that last week. We think he's angry, apathetic, or absent. And we showed last week he's not any of those. And when these things happen to our lives, we start looking at God and go, you're not cooperating with me. Are you even listening? Are you even there? Can I submit that if cooperation is your proof that someone exists, your kids wouldn't believe you existed? I mean, my kids would definitely be walking around half their life. There's no such thing as dad. There's no such thing as dad, right? So cooperation cannot be proof that God exists, okay? That can't be it. Just because you say, God, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and then he doesn't do it, you can't say, well, you must not be there. It just doesn't work that way. He's never been absent. He's never been apathetic. And he's never been angry about you. See, part of our problem is that we live in the West, and we think things should just automatically work out. We don't think anything bad should actually happen to us, Ebola. And we think we've always got somebody else to blame, okay? And it's the big bad government, usually on our side, right? It's their fault. Their fault. You should have protected me. You should have made me happy. Whatever. I'm not even going there. We'll work that out later. And we always got this, which I love. We always got this positive mentality. America's the best. Woo, woo. Can't happen to us. Woo, woo. And then something happens to us, and we're like, God, why'd you let us down? Why'd you forget about us? Can I believe you're letting that happen in our country? Please. Please. He's not. Or we want to throw our hands up and say, God, why have you left me out of the good life? Why did I get better? What did I do? What's wrong with me? Where did I go wrong? Here's what's helpful. As we open the Bible and we see everybody who got you to where you are today in your Christian faith, the reason you even have a Christian faith, all those people are not strangers to this adversity. They all had them. And they continued to plod along through life in an effort to get the gospel to the next generation. And I think you and I have to have a fundamental, monumental shift in our thinking about why you're even doing what you're doing. Why are you coming and sitting in church? Why are you raising kids to be godly disciples? Why are you having good friends? And why you have a great marriage? Why do you have all these things? Why? And if you look back at the beginning, it's because you need to get the gospel to the next generation. You got to be able to hand it off. And when you come up against adversity, when something happens in your life and you're faced with the fact, I don't know that I even want to do it, you get off track from the main goal. And that's not cool. So today, Paul is probably the best example of this. Not that Paul. Paul, Bible. Best example of a guy who bumped up against adversity. I mean, listen, Paul never met the pre-ascended Jesus. See, as Christians, we believe that Jesus ascended into heaven after he died and rose again. Then there was that time when people saw him, and then he ascended. Paul never saw Jesus prior to the ascension. Paul met Jesus figuratively, or the bright light. I mean, he met him, but wasn't prior to going to heaven. Everything Paul knows about Jesus, he heard from somebody else. Paul's more like you than you believe. Paul listened to what other people said about Jesus, and he started drawing some conclusions about Jesus. And then he met the Holy Spirit, and he met Jesus, and he lived inside of him, and then that grew inside of him, just like it does in you. But this guy met some adversity. I mean, this guy became a Jesus follower after being a Jesus hater. We said this morning, Paul actually got to go to the government and say, hey, I'd really like to go kill some people. Is that okay? And the government said, sure. I mean, had some really big power. I mean, he was, in his mind, living the good life, doing God's work, going out and killing people like you. And he didn't have to worry about repercussions. It was his job. Then he became this Paul and became a follower, and notably the greatest evangelist that you'll ever read about. But after he, quote, what we like to say, came to Jesus, he had something bad happen to him. And it was so bad that it actually, in his mind, hindered what he was supposed to be doing because he became a follower of Christ. I mean, imagine being Paul. You're Saul of Tarsus, you're killing Christians. I mean, you think you've got it all. You have a Damascus Road experience. That's why we call it that, because Paul met this bright light on Damascus Road, headed to Damascus. Gets blinded by Jesus, gets visited by people that supernatural things start happening, miracles. In Paul's life, he becomes blind, and then his eyes are opened again. He meets a guy that this light told him he was going to meet. I mean, it's freaky, all right? So, Paul, you're living as Paul. And then all of a sudden, you're like, okay, John, I give my whole life to you. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do what you want to say. And then, boom, this thing hits you. And you can't effectively do what God called you to do, at least in your mind. What would you do? What would you think? How would you pray? I mean, he tells us that in his inner wrestling, his back and forth with God about what's happening, we know that Paul learned a valuable lesson. And this lesson that he learned is so amazing, and it has an amazing insight for what you and I need to apply in our life. We don't need to be like Paul. We just need to learn from the insights that Paul gathered in living his life following God. Now, you've probably heard it. We're going to go to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Here's what he writes to the church in Corinth. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited. Hold it. Therefore, what's it there for? You got to go back and look at that. But in order to, that's a phrase you need to underline. Remember, in order to keep me from becoming conceited. That's a purpose statement. Something's getting ready to happen for a purpose, in order to. And it's to keep me from getting conceited. Paul says there's a purpose. All right, what's the next part? I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Now hold on. I was given. Given. The word used is the same word that would have been used if Paul was having his birthday party and someone brought him the most amazing gift he'd ever seen, and he opened it, and if you're like a 3-year-old on Christmas, you go, ah, I got it, and you dance around. I cannot believe you bought that for me, Mom and Dad. That's the word that he's using. I was given a what? Thorn in my flesh. I'm excited. I've been bestowed upon this gift of a thorn. A thorn. A thorn. I would have probably said I was cursed with a thorn, wouldn't you? I mean, I have been troubled now with a thorn in my flesh. I have been maybe punished. I'd probably say punished. Wouldn't you say punished? Right? I mean, I was called by God to go out and spread the gospel, and now I've been given this thorn. Something's wrong. I'm being punished. Thorn. Thorn is a constant, irritating problem. That's the definition of the Greek word used. I was given this constant, irritating problem. Messenger of Satan. Don't let anybody tell you they know exactly what that means, because we cannot find the full definition of what that phrase means. Many people, at least the majority of them, believe that it's just a figure of speech. You ever said, hurts like the devil? Or it hurts like where the devil lives? You said that one? Is that yours? Hurts like H-E double hockey sticks? Most people believe that's just what he's saying. Messenger of Satan. It's a reference back to the thorn. So we know it hurt badly. Okay? We know it was not just something little, okay? Not like a thorn that you would think of, but a thorn where they would think of a constant, irritating problem. Like a thorn that you can't get picked out. Paul says, in order to keep me from getting conceited, I was given the gift of a thorn that keeps tormenting, which is the same word that would be used today if you wanted to show what a bully does every day. Bullies beat people up. It actually means to repeatedly hit with your fist. That's the word. So Paul says, in order that I won't get conceited, I was given the greatest gift of a thorn, an irritating, repeated beating. Do you understand an attitude yet? It's there. You got to kind of look deep yet. See, we don't really know everything about that whole messenger of Satan. Doesn't really matter, because here's what we do know from the text. Paul saw this thorn as a gift with a purpose, and it wasn't going away. A gift with a purpose that was not going away. Some people thought it was epilepsy. There are some stories out there that they said that Paul would have been preaching, and he stopped preaching, and he just kind of fell out, because they didn't know what epilepsy was. And then he'd kind of wake up and go like, what happened? And people would have kind of equated that with demon possession. Or some people thought it was a speech impediment. Some people thought it was headache. Some people thought it was eye. Isn't it funny how we really care what the problem was? Well, I don't know what the problem was, because if I got the same problem, then I'll be more like Paul. That thorn. Okay, whatever your constant, irritating problem is that seems to never go away, that constantly beats up on you, that's your thorn. Okay? And Paul took what you're having, and he looked at it as a gift with a purpose. We do know it was painful, humiliating, and debilitating. Those three things. Painful, humiliating, and debilitating. He had to deal with it. This guy, called by God to spread the gospel throughout the entire Gentile world, and after becoming a Christian, developed something that was painful, humiliating, and debilitating. How many of you would have just decided, I'll just go back to being Saul? Right? He had the greatest life. He had it all. Notoriety, money, power. Joins the Jesus army and gets a painful, humiliating, debilitating problem. What would you do? Because here's what he did when he realized it wasn't going away in verse 8. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Now, there's a little bit of communication grammatically you got to look at here. Because this is not Monday, add that to my prayer list. I need this to go away. Tuesday, thank you for my breakfast. Oh yeah, and don't forget, I'd really like for you to get rid of this problem. Wednesday, I'll just give it to the church prayer list. Thursday, God, okay, we've been talking about this. You're not really listening here. That's not what we're talking about. It's written in such a manner that we believe that seasons of Paul's life, 3 separate occasions in his life, he stopped what he was doing and got to the point that this debilitating problem kept him from doing what he felt he was called to do. 3 separate times in his life, falling on his face saying, I cannot go on anymore. I cannot do what you've asked me to do, and I don't see any relief in sight. Can anybody relate at all? What? Yeah. Here's an interesting thing. Some of you have been told that the reason you're in the shape you're in, whatever your situation is because you don't have enough faith to get out of it. And I'm here to tell you that's horse dung. I'm sorry, there's no other way to argue with it. It is not theologically or biblically accurate at all. To think you can faith God out of something is just, my favorite word, asinine. That I have this power over God. That a situation happens and God's just waiting to see if I got enough faith to make him get me out of it. Horrible teaching. Horrible. You are not happier than me. You are not more faithful than me. You are not given more money than me, and therefore getting better results from God because of all of that. It's ridiculous, and we need to absolutely stop thinking that way. And you laugh, or you might just said amen, but you're actually living that way sometimes. You're out doing things in an effort to please God to the point that he will do something on your behalf, or that he will change your situation. You're doing it. You're living it. It might be as spiritual as praying more. I just need to pray more. I just need to spend more time with God. If I spend more time with God, then my situation's going to change. That's the same thing. I'm going to build more and more and more and more, and he's going to do more and more and more and more. He's going to do different. He's just going to change the way it is. You know, I got a bumper sticker. Prayer changes things. I wish the bumper sticker was accurate. Prayer changes you. That's who it changes. You start to realize just how foolish you are for sitting down there asking him to do stuff. Like a vending machine. Paul pleaded with God to do something that would... he's pleading with God. That's what he's doing, though. God, you've got to take it away or I can't spread the gospel anymore. God, you called me to be this, but if you don't fix this, I can't do it. God, if you don't change my situation, I can't do what you've called me to do. Do you understand how crazy that is? And here we got Paul saying it. Pleading. Take it away. Make me better. I don't know what it was, so change my situation. It can apply to anything. Just fix it, God, because the way it is ain't right. That's basically Paul's prayer. First part of verse 9 says, but he said, now hold on. How many of y'all have prayed multiple times over that? Something. God, take it away. Go ahead. It's okay. You're in light company. I'm just asking you to tell the truth. I'm not really seeing if you really did it. I already know you did. Paul prayed the first time, God, you got to fix it, got to fix it. Guess what he heard? Crickets. Thank you. Yeah, they prayed in the garden. That's where it all came from. Crickets. Second time it happened. God, there's no, you've got, I just don't, I mean, I'm sure he clenching his fist going, there's nothing, you got to, please, God, take it away. I cannot do this anymore. What did he hear? Crickets. Third time. God, please, just would you, I've done this for so long. You've seen how much but it's starting to get tough, God, and I'm not going to see any more people come to know you. If you don't fix this, people are making fun of me, or I'm waking up in weird places, or whatever it is, it's happening. You're not, God, it's not a good witness. God, what people are seeing of you isn't cool because of this with me. You're going to have, we need to fix your reputation. What did he hear? Oh, no, he didn't hear crickets. Not the third time. Here's what he heard. No. No. He said it like this. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Now, you can, in this verse, you can actually switch the words grace and power. They're exactly the same word, just translated different. And the English people hate to put, my grace is sufficient for my grace is made perfect. It just doesn't sound right. You can put them together. My power is sufficient for you, for my grace is made perfect in your weakness. God is saying, listen, if you want to see my power, understand your weakness. You want to experience my grace to the fullest because it's made the biggest and the best when you're weak. You want to understand how much I can do? Understand it through how much you can't do it. So Paul, the answer, no. I'm not going to take it away. But I'm going to give you grace and power through it to press on in spite of the fact that it's not going away. Paul, I want you to stop worrying about your circumstances, and I want you to worry about me, and I'll provide all you need to walk through it. Maybe Jesus even said, Paul, I gave this sermon once. Go back and listen to my podcast. Because back on the Mount, I told you all to not worry about your life. I told you not to worry about what you're going to wear and what you're going to eat and what you're going to live and how you're going to live. I told you not to worry about all that stuff. So the answer to, can I take it away from you? No. I'm just going to provide you enough of me to get through it. Are you there yet? Can you understand that maybe that's God's answer? Literally, what he says, my power reaches its full measure and is perfected in your weakness. So now Paul had 4 things to add to his list, or the 4th thing. He now had something that was painful, humiliating, debilitating, permanent. Wasn't going away. Can you imagine the load that gets lifted from your life when the God of the universe tells you it's not going away? You can quit asking now. Do you understand? This is a switch in attitude, but that you can finally stop worrying about it. When God says it's not going away, you're actually going to see me more in it. I don't even want to use the word I'm using it. You're going to find me in it. My power is going to be so great that you're going to see so much of me in it that there's just no way I'm going to remove it from you. Are you there yet? In other words, Paul, I hadn't forgotten about you. I still know you're there. You're still right in the center of my will. But the answer to the question of will I take your problem away is no. I just want you to see my grace and power in it. You're right where you belong. Do not try to adjust your course because of something that's happening on the planet. Understand that I told you to do something, I've called you to be something, and you're it. And no other planetary circumstance is going to change it. Look at me. I gave it to you. I'm not taking it away. I'll even go as far. This is me now talking. I'll even go as far as to say, okay, Satan gave it to you. I ain't taking it away. I mean, if you need to go there for still a little while longer, I'm fine. Go with it. Satan did it. Cool. God's just not taking it away. Not because God can't take it away. You got to understand that. Satan can do stuff, cool. God can do infinitely more. So nothing can happen to you that God cannot fix, okay? Forget the fact that you think God is limited in any way at all. So wherever you believe it came from, if you've still got it, it's because God wants you to keep it. That's hard to swallow because each and every one of you have your own situations, and you're out there going, if this came from God, forget it. I mean, if this is how God teaches me stuff, I don't want to learn anymore. And what God is saying is, look at your situation and understand that my grace and power is actually perfected through it. And you'll see more of me when you take it. So, Paul, the answer is no, but there's a promise. There's a promise you'll find me in it. And there's a promise that I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not leaving you there. I'm going to be with you. But that's not even the profound part. How he finishes verse 9 is really cool. Therefore, hold it, I will boast all the more gladly. Some of your versions say glory. Therefore, I will glory all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Therefore, since it's not going away, I understand now it's not going anywhere. I will now, get this, the word is, get it all over me. Your dogs roll around in it. That's the same phrase. Therefore, I will just immerse myself in this situation. Paul says, I'm going to take my irritating, humiliating, permanent, painful, debilitating circumstance, and I'm going to own it. It's now going to be what you know me by. Has anyone of you ever said, I will not be defined by my circumstances? Paul says, I will not only be defined by them, but that's all you're going to know about me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk up and go, ha, I'm an idiot. I mean, if idiot is your circumstance. Have you ever heard Laura talk about cancer? Go ahead and nod. Yeah. Some people, when they get cancer, they go like this. I've got cancer. Or you're talking about them, and you have to whisper, they got cancer last year. That's bad. Own it. I have, Dennis, I have AIDS. Dennis, I have sores all over my mouth. Dennis, I have all of your hepatitis. Dennis, I have it all. What is yours that you're hiding from? What is yours that you're pretending you don't have? What is yours that you're minimizing? It's okay. I don't want to talk about it. Paul says, I'm not just going to not talk about it. When I walk up into town and they look at me and they go, hey, aren't you Paul? You're the one that yep, I fell asleep. Yep, no, that was me. It's probably going to happen again. You might want to get used to it. No, I can't. It takes me if it's speech impediment, it takes me an hour to preach. You know what? Sign up for a little longer services because it's all I got. Own it. He says, I'm going to own it. And I'm going to be glad about it. I'm going to take all my weaknesses and I'm going to go, ha, look how bad I really am. And why is he doing it? There's another purpose statement, so that, here's why I'm doing it. Because I want Christ's power on me. He desires so much of God's power, or remember, you can replace with grace. I want so much of God's grace that I want my weaknesses to be the front line of what people see. I don't want people to look at my life and go, oh, you got it all together. Oh, you must really be blessed. I want people to look at my life and go, man, you stink. So that you could turn around and go, absolutely, and you can't imagine how awesome it is. Because of Christ coming through me, he's taken all of my weaknesses, and I don't even care about them. He's taken all of my problems, I don't even care about them. I'm centered, I'm focused, I'm moving on. I don't care if I got a limp. I don't care if I'm blind. I don't care if I'm deaf. I don't care if I have cancer. I don't care if I have all your other diseases. I don't care if I have Ebola. I said it twice. I'm trying to go for 3. Because many of you are scared to death that you're going to get Ebola. Some of you aren't even reading about it on Facebook because you think it could come through that. Don't laugh. You're out there. How many times have you talked about Ebola this week? At least 7, most of you once a day. Right? Scared to death, I'm going to get Ebola. If you get it, you better be ready to boast in it. You better be able to get out there and say, I got it. And I'm experiencing Christ's power and grace because of it. And I can't wait to tell everybody. If I have to tell you from behind glass, that's fine. But it's not going to get me down. I'm not going to sit around and wallow and whine and cry and I can't do what God wants me to do anymore. I'm going to boast. I'm going to boast. What are you going to do in the meantime, Paul? Well, I'm just going to own it. I'm just going to be who I am. Doing what I'm supposed to do. There's a little bit of grammatical stuff in that one too, so I'm going to paraphrase that one that you can remember. Embracing your inability is a prerequisite to experiencing Christ's ability. If you take apart that verse you just read and you get it in, I didn't want to Greekify you. That's what you get. Embracing your inability is a prerequisite to experiencing Christ's ability. See, do you understand? There's no way for you to experience God's grace and power unless there's something wrong with you. There's no way for you to understand how big God is until you figure out how small you are. No way for you to figure out how much He can do until you figure out how much you can't do. Okay? So that's what Paul is saying. I have to embrace my weaknesses so that I can understand how much God actually does. Instead, you and I walk around. I got this problem and that problem. I really need God to fix them so that people or I can do what I'm supposed to do. No. Embrace what's wrong so that you can understand just who God is. See, we bump against this whenever it is, in whatever it is in your life that makes you feel like this. Paul's saying, when you embrace it and don't try to run from it or faith it away, which doesn't make any sense, you will experience Christ's power inside of you. When you just hit it head on. Run into a problem and then throw it on your back, keep going. Move on. Here's how he finishes it, verse 10. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. Because when I'm weak, then I'm strong. When I'm weak, I'm really strong. See, as a non-Christian, I can imagine when you look at that and go, yeah, y'all really are nuts. But if you understand Christ inside of you, you'll know what Paul's talking about. When I, the person, am minimized, I am now strong spiritually. I now have a power coming through a weak vessel that is unexplainable. Now, real quick before we're leaving, weaknesses and hardships, those are not, you didn't self-inflict those, okay? You didn't go out and be a moron and then get insulted, okay? Don't delight in those. Delight when you're doing what God has asked you to do and something comes along that whether you know of your control and you just find yourself, then you delight. This is not a license for you to go out and be stupid and then tell everybody, it's okay, insult me, I got Jesus. Not what we're talking about. Not what we're talking about. Because that right there is not the American way. You wouldn't do that. To which Paul would say, that's why you're not experiencing the grace of God in the area in which you struggle most. Because you think it should just go away. I think all this hinges on the opening phrase. I'll show you this and we're done. Here's how we started. In order that, I was given a thorn. That's where your attitude has to start to get to where we're talking Paul was. In order that, I was given a thorn. God has a purpose in order that. God has a reason. And it's for Him to fulfill His purpose for me in this world. He gave me a gift of a thorn. That's a huge attitude switch. And you have the option. And I say option because back at the beginning I said I'm not authority. And you got to come to this on your own. I'm not telling you you have to look at your situation as a gift of a thorn. But I am telling you, if you can allow God to bring you to the realization that your problem or your situation is a gift of a thorn, you're going to realize grace and power like no other. That's a promise. Our life has purpose, and our life has promise. Let's get out of here and live it. Stand with me and we'll go. Tonight we have movie night back in the back building together as we come in fellowship at 6:30 and hang out, and then we're going to watch the movie Unconditional. Yeah, we found one that didn't stink. Yeah. So come out and bring an appetizer. Just come out and eat appetizers. There's always plenty. So just come out and hang. We have free popcorn and drink and just sit together and fellowship and then watch a movie. You'll enjoy it. And then the rest of the stuff that's in the bulletin, I want you to be a part of this week as you're going. Billy Ruth, where's my sign? Where's my sign? We are doing next Sunday night in this church memorial service for Daniel Curran, which is Ollie's son. And then we're having fellowship dinner afterwards. So no health part next week. But we are showing God's love by providing food for 100 people. Okay? Billy Ruth will be in the foyer, and she has a list. 5 things we got to provide for 100 people. You just say, yep, I'll bring that one, or I'll bring one of those. It'd be easier for 5 people to bring deviled eggs for 100 than it will be for the 2 that are signed up. Okay? So if you can sign up, bring that for next Sunday. That'd be awesome. Then the rest of the stuff that's in the bulletin. Oh, who's signing up for a Hallelujah? Mount Morgan. If you're going to bring your car or your bike or just have a spot to give out candy, I need you to tell Morgan this morning. We need 30 people. We have 12. So I need at least, I wasn't even homeschooled. 18. Need 18. Preacher numbers would have been, we already got 50 and we need 12 or whatever. I don't know. So if you can bring your car, you can hand out candy for 500 kids. 500 kids. That's how many people we'll see. Be prepared to do that when you come. All right? Good stuff? Now how many people's happy they came to church this morning? Oh, yeah. There's more. There's more. Awesome. We'll pray. Randy, you looked at me, brother. It was an accident. Pray for us, would you?